we all innately have these skills. We can all negotiate. If you're a mom, you know how to negotiate. Like try negotiating with a toddler before bed, right?
Yeah.
That's a transferable skill.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we get real about what it takes to succeed, whether it's in business, life, or both. I'm talking to game-changing and visionary women who've broken barriers, built empires, and redefined success on their own terms. They'll share their strategies, secrets, and the no BS advice you need to rise to the top. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice, also known as JJ. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today, we have Erika Hanafin. She is the CEO of HeyMama. And if you have ever heard of HeyMama or used HeyMama, you will know who she is and all the amazing information and community that HeyMama has to offer. Hi, Erika.
Hi, Jennifer. It's so good to see you. I'm so glad I wore pink earrings to match the whole brand. I'm on brand today.
I know. We have a vibe. We have an aura,
We have a
as the
vibe.
kids say. Yeah.
I
I
love it.
love it. I love your painting in the background, too. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. That is actually a former Hey Mama member, Elizabeth Sutton. She's
Awesome.
incredible.
Super
Yes.
talented.
Incredible artist. Yes.
Well, thank you for coming today. I want to dive right in. You know, as I said, like, Hey Mama is this amazing platform that helps women who are mothers and entrepreneurs, and I'll let you talk more about it, you know, basically balance their life or attempt to in a quicker way. There's no real balance, as we know, as moms and entrepreneurs, but it makes it easier, and it's definitely helped me in many times. So I want to start like how you got here. Like where is your background? What did you do before? So tell us a little bit about that, your bio.
Oh, yes. I mean, we could talk about that all day, but I come actually from an entrepreneurial family. So I have entrepreneurial genes in my DNA. My grandparents started a business in their garage, and my grandmother took that business and became CEO in the late 70s. So for me, growing up in this environment around women, supporting women and empowering women through leadership, development, collaboration, etc., has always been my core mission and my ethos. I've also have a 2-decade career in startup growth. So I have been in a number of startups in New York City as well as San Francisco, helping them get to that next level of growth focused on strategy. How do we create a sustainable business, organizational culture? And I'm happy to say that actually, after I had helped bring another acquisition to my last startup, I got introduced to the founder of Hey Mama and was doing some consulting work. And now we joke that I have the fastest career at Hey Mama. I went from consultant to CEO in less than 6 months, and that's now almost 5 years ago.
Wow, has it been that long?
It
Wow.
has.
Amazing. So let's go back to like, what was the business that your grandparents started? I'm so
They
curious.
started a medical device business. So you probably would recognize a few instruments when you go to the doctor, blood pressure units, as well as disposable thermometers that were called Tempedots.
No way.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yes.
And so obviously, I mean, it's great growing up and, you know, seeing a woman in charge as the CEO, especially in the 70s.
Yes.
You know, I always talk about how when I grew up, no one in my family, my mom didn't graduate from high school, like, no, and I had no mentors. And I literally looked to TV and I was like, doctor, lawyer,
Right.
private investigator, Charlie's Angel, you know what I mean? I was like, that's why I chose lawyer. I mean, I hadn't, you know, if you can see it, you could be it. So from the beginning, you knew that you could do this. How do you think that affected you? Like in the difference between, you know, your friends growing up, your girlfriends, et cetera, like do you think that you had a different mindset because of that?
I think so. I think that there's two elements. I'm also the oldest of 4 girls, so I'm a natural leader. And, you know, certainly being in an environment where my mom, my grandmother, my dad was the biggest woman supporter, and continues to be the biggest women supporter, always motivating and sharing and all of these things. So I do think that that's innate. I'd like to say that when they ultimately sold the business in 1990, it crushed my dreams. I thought that I was just going, like, I thought that was my natural progression, that I was just going to come in and help. I grew up in this business and was going to come in and help run the business, run the family corporation. And that didn't happen. But what was really interesting is that I saw the drive. I saw the sacrifices, quite frankly, that it put for a family of my sisters, my mom. My dad was always traveling, helping. He ultimately became president, and my grandmother moved to chairwoman. But there's a lot going on in building a business, and I think that especially in today's culture, when we look at corporations, when we look at startups, and then when we talk about women in particular, moms building businesses, there's a lot that goes into that, and the sacrifices that we make, and the quote mom guilt that we often experience, in having to decide or having to birth two businesses is a big thing. And so for me, that's always been front and center to everything I've done, and also like the natural ambition in me. But I'm fortunate that our community and within HeyMama is 70% entrepreneurs. And so, they're kind of at this interesting intersection, if you will, of motherhood and business growth and entrepreneurial growth. And what does that look like? And how can we continue to support and all of that journey, and create opportunities and access, quite frankly, to help build their businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Which, we didn't grow up with that as women in particular. I see it in my son versus my daughter, like team sports, and then the dads of, and like helping get, internships or whatever it is, and just giving like business tips along the way. My son's 11, my kids are 11, you know what I mean? I can just see how it progresses where it's just not served in the same way to girls. And so all these communities, and why I started this podcast is to like show that there's all these different resources that are available to us more and more by the day, and make it easier for us and less paralyzing when we're going to start these businesses.
1,000%. I mean, we always say like it's hard, right? You look at all of the studies, this, right? Why are investments not going into female funded or women or mom businesses? It's really hard because they have to take time to become a parent, and then they have to, they're not able to respond as quickly or whatever it might be, right? There's still those societal pressures on and in particular moms. But it doesn't have to be. And there's also opportunities in that for more women to rebuild their confidence, to collaborate with one another, to find mentorship opportunities. I like to, we always say network equals net worth. Like you can do that. And it's just going to look slightly different.
So when you started out a lot, and you were saying that you did a lot of different startups, et cetera, what kind of startups were they, and what did you do? I love to hear the journey because, it's so daunting when you're in college or just getting out and you feel like you have to pick a field and that's all you're going to do.
Yes.
Oh, and there's been so many pivots that, people have. So can we just talk briefly about that before we get
Yes,
into
for
your
sure.
mama?
And you're absolutely right. I went to school thinking I was going to be an accountant. I wanted to be a forensic accountant. And there was no way when KPMG and everybody came in, and I was like, I have to sit behind a desk for 4 years. I can't talk to anybody. Like it just was a different thing. So that box is real. I started my first foray in my very first startup actually was backed by Kleiner Perkins, and an incredible investor, Aileen Lee, who's
Oh,
now
yeah.
coined the term unicorn and has Cowboy Ventures. I learned a lot from her, and then ultimately went on to be the first employee for all of the taxi advertising in New York City. And we ultimately got acquired by a $3 billion public company. So it's always been these transitions around either coming in as the first hire, if you will, to look at what is the revenue or what is our fundamental growth strategy. And I would say that from an industry perspective, I've been pretty agnostic. I haven't had one area that I kind of focus on because I think strategy, and mostly in startups, most startups follow a very similar process, regardless of what industry you are in, right? You have an idea, then you conceptualize the idea, then you're going to validate the idea. And that journey is not unique to a specific business. That journey, that venture building process and methodology is fundamental to growing and starting and growing a business. So I've been in advertising, deep mobile technology, AI and AR beauty tech, and now building a community of over 75,000 women and moms.
I mean, that's so interesting. There's such different genres,
So interesting, right?
How did you convince the next person to hire you? I mean, they shouldn't need convincing, obviously. You know what I mean? But it's like, what did you say to them that like how you can transfer skills? Because that I think is very paralyzing for a lot of women too. They don't really understand how they don't love the business they're in. They know they have a skill set. How do you identify it to then go to another kind of area or different kind of subsector or section of business?
I love that. And I love that term transferable skills because we talk about that often on our Motherhood on the Resume initiative, which I know you've been have heard of and been a part of. But really, we all innately have these skills. We can all negotiate. If you're a mom, you know how to negotiate. Like try negotiating with a toddler before bed, right? That's a transferable skill that's not specific to a particular industry per se, right? Project management, time management, that's just something that you have to do when you're a mother. And so I think when we talk about skills, the thing that I always start with is what could you always like for me it's strategy. I like to see the whole picture and then I can really quickly discern what needs to happen and then create a plan and execute on that plan. Is a little bit different on that is we can talk strategy all day long, right? But we have to be able to execute as the keyword you just said, which is pivot or
Mm-hmm.
fail fast and learn pretty quickly. So I think that finding those skills, we all have them somewhere. It's what skill resonates the most with you that you when you put on paper, okay, I've been here and I've done this, and then I went here and I did this, or I've done all of these things. What's that commonality? What is that skill? And then really like hone in on it. You don't need to be an expert of all things. You can do, which I think is also this mindset that we're seeing. Oh, you have to be this, and then you can be this, and then you can do this, and you can be a marketer and you can do these things. No, like focus on that skill that one can bring you joy, and two, that that you're good at, and really hone in on that because that's really important in whatever you're doing, both professionally or personally.
So true, right?
Right.
And so, okay, then you did all these, that's all great advice, and I think it really has some applicability with people figuring out what they want to do next. And then you had led the last one to acquisition, the last company, and then you consult. Then did you just start a consulting company? Did you go right into Hey Mama? What was that transition like before him?
I was doing some consulting work, mostly what I recognized at that time back in 2017, 2018 was that startups want that big corporate logo, right? Anybody that's building a business is like, I'm going to get into Walmart or I'm going to get into Target or whatever it is. I need this Procter and Gamble logo. But they couldn't, that was a lot of work. And then the corporate wanted to work with a startup, but they didn't know how to work with a startup, right? A startup doesn't have 15 procurement officers and, to sign contracts. They might have an outsourced legal team, right? And so I saw that there was this connect when we were going through this negotiation was they didn't know how to work well with each other. And so I was doing a lot of that kind of work for some of the world's Fortune 50 companies, Procter & Gamble, Cliff Bar, et cetera. And then like I said, I got introduced to Hey Mama and I was doing really my focus was on strategy and revenue strategy and growth. And that just quickly evolved. And now Hey Mama we just announced an acquisition of Hey Mama earlier this month to Luminary, which is a
With our
female.
friend Kate Luzio, who's been on the
Yes, good friend
podcast.
Kate.
Yep, love it.
Kate and I met, she was one of the very first people when I became CEO who came up to me and was like, how are you doing? How can I support you? And was just a huge champion. And so it's a natural fit. I'm really excited for our community, our members on both sides, both on the Luminary side as well as on the Hey Mama side. And so we're working on that transition. So far, so good. And the feedback's been really incredible.
That's amazing. Talk about acquisitions. I come from an entertainment background, right? And we did a lot of joint ventures, strengthening two companies come together to strengthen what they have, complementary capabilities, but not a lot of overlap necessarily.
Mhm.
And, doing acquisitions plus, what that can equal. And I feel like the female founder kind of community has been slow to that. And Kate and I have talked about this since I've met her like 6, 7 years
Yeah,
ago.
right.
Like this is,
Right.
how it's like, oh, we can come together. Can you talk about like this in your just your experience in the past with acquisitions and really just like nuts and bolts, like 101, like what is an acquisition, why you would do it, why you felt like, hey, mama, it was a time. Just kind of go into that.
Sure. I mean,
What
every
was that like?
everything is completely different, right? Like no acquisition is going to be the same
Yeah.
for any company. I would say that this has probably been one of the hardest ones that I've been through. Um, every aspect of that is different. What I often say when I'm mentoring an entrepreneur is, of course, you want to have an exit strategy, and that exit strategy could look different today than it could in 3 years, right? If it's, I want to scale this business and then have a company buy it or a brand buy it, that's one aspect. I want to, completely walk away. That's another aspect. And it's going to go into this other realm, or it could be, maybe it's not necessarily an acquisition. Maybe it's an IPO or, you're going to take it to that next level beyond it. So it's hard because that looks different for everything. What I will say that is always going to be the same is to know your numbers, and and have be open to what that could look like. It could look like, a full buyout. It could look like a revenue over time. It could look, it could look different for everyone, and it could look different based off of who is the one that acquiring you, whether it's a another company, another private equity firm, all of those things. It's going to look slightly different, and there's going to be different objectives or KPIs within that. So I think what's important, what I always say is, what you think the outcome is going to be is very rarely going to happen, right?
You're
So
not just going to sign this agreement and walk away with all this
right,
money.
right. Yeah, it's like your birth plan, like
Yeah.
tell you when you become a mom, it's like you're going to have this birth plan, but don't stick to it because you're not sure what's going to happen when you get there. That's exactly like selling a company, because you could have it all in your picture or in your mind, like this is how it's going to go, and that's wonderful. Of course you want to fight for that. Of course you want to have some goal to work towards, but it doesn't always work out as perfectly as in that. And so you have to be willing to identify, one, when it's the right time, two, if you want to stay on as a founder or a leader in that process. So there's going to be a lot of also self-discovery that you're going to have to go through when you do go through an acquisition.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. It's it's always what everybody hears. It's like, oh, we're going to be acquired, and it's just not necessarily the easiest and smooth process, and
It
it takes
is.
a lot of time and a lot of lawyers and a lot of structuring and tax and implications and all this stuff. Yeah.
It's very expensive. And by the way, there is something, I'm a firm believer in profitability. Having been in the startups across everything, VC, private equity, et cetera, everyone has their different KPIs or strategies, if you will. It is perfectly okay to be a $2-3 million business and be profitable and not have to sell if you're okay with that. You don't necessarily need to have an acquisition to have a strong business. And I think that that's sometimes what we forget. To your point, it's, oh no, I got to sell. I got to sell. If you're okay with where you are and you've got a strong business, then that's great. That's great too.
Yeah. Exactly. Such a good point. Okay, so let's talk about the Hey Mama luminary. First, let's talk about Hey Mama in case people, don't have kids or don't know what it is or and need to join. Like, talk a little background of Hey Mama, what it is.
Yes. Hey Mom is the first and the largest community that supports moms in business. And that is, we do that by creating programming that allows for access to funding, access to collaborations. It's a community. I always say it's a reciprocity community. You get what you put in, you get out of it what you put in. And then we have events all across the country that are intentionally bringing women together or moms together. Because we find that when women, in particular moms, are with like-minded women, then all of their outcomes improve, right? Then there's a shared, we see within Hey Mama, there's a shared vulnerability. We're all moms, so we all get what we're going through, right? So that immediately dissipates any type of, when you walk into another room and you're like, oh, I don't know who this person is or what this person does or whatever it is. And the events can help support your business growth. We do whiteboarding and wines. We do mindful moments, which is one of my favorites. And then we have bigger tentpole events that are more quarterly around, International Women's Day, our Motherhood on the Resume is a big one, a summit, etc. And it's been a thriving community. We're predominantly US based or North America based. Although we do have some, pockets of members globally. Yeah. And so then you want me to share the luminary? The
Yeah,
luminary.
I would love that, because I love this when it was announced. I was like, okay, yes.
Yeah. Yes. Luminary is a female founded solopreneur. Kate Luzio is the founder. She has a banking background, created Luminary in New York City with, similar missions and values to allow for access for women and create a community. There is a physical space in Nomad. And it's really quickly evolved across the country. They've got some partner networks in different states. So members can, if you're traveling, you can go to a partner network. They have a strong digital community as well. And where there's some natural synergy, we've partnered with Luminary on our summit in 2023. We've done some co-working days over the last few years with them in partnership with, our Hey Mama and Luminary members. And so it was a natural extension for all of us that our moms can be served both in person as well as still virtually with the programming. They have a lot of strong corporate partnerships with Verizon and Chase, et cetera. And so their entrepreneurial program's really strong. We're really happy. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, that's so great. So, can you talk a little bit about like what you were saying like this acquisition, like they take on like what are some of the things that have to happen, in an acquisition to make these work?
Gosh, all the things. I mean, you have to be, timing is probably the first and the foremost. Again, getting everything clear on what is it that you're looking. Is it an asset that you're looking to sell? Is it the full package? What is it that you're looking to go through? Having a really strong team is really important. So, your lawyers, your counsel, your finance, all of those core people. The hardest part about a transition, when you're going through diligence before an acquisition is you can't say anything.
Yeah.
And the confidentiality. And so that's really hard because if you're going as a leader, especially for us with a small team, you want to be able to share, but you can't. And so I think that's also something to be aware of is, it takes a lot of time away from your typical daily duties to go through that and to make it successful. And then it doesn't end there, right? You don't just sign the deal and to walk away. There is a transition, which is what we're in. So we're working against, a 90-day transition where things will continue to transfer into Luminaries teams. So that's, high level.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It
And
is a
from a
lot.
personnel perspective, right? It's like people people don't understand these things. They've done their job, and they're like, what does this mean for me? And, trying to managing a team and stuff like that, it can be daunting. So yeah, handling all of that is a lot too. Although I know this is going to be such a strong acquisition and, the capabilities together are, just going to make it even more powerful. I love it.
Thank you.
And so, okay, let's go back to, I love for the podcast to have some, obviously I've given a lot of tips and things about, things that you're going through right now. But as you as an executive, like, let's talk about things that you think that you did well and things that you think you could have done better.
It's taken me a lot to realize, as somebody who's type A and OCD, it doesn't have to be perfect,
Yeah.
right? It's progress. I say it's progress over perfection. And that is something that I'm always striving for. And especially as a leader, when you've got in your mind something the way that it's supposed to be and shared perspectives on that, at some point, there's going to be a happy medium. And so finding what that looks like, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just, you just have to continue to iterate against the progress and get the feedback and the learnings to be able to quickly adapt. I would say that motherhood has made me a lot more empathetic as a leader. Also very hard are, you're, especially for us, we're a mom first community, right? We put moms first, but we're also a business. And so for us, it's really hard because I have KPIs and I've got goals and I've got all, we've got to do the work. I can't just sit here. And so that's also a challenge, I would say, is, finding that balance. What I also think is really important is that sometimes you have to do a little bit more research. Not everything is as it seems. And, obviously I'm a firm believer, and I'm sure, Kanika Chadha Gupta, who says it's mom sense. You have to use that often and really trust it to know what it is that if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
Yeah.
And so there's probably something that needs to be evaluated or adjusted or whatever it might be. So I'm working on that a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. No, I know it too. I ignored my mom sense in a deal like not that long ago within the last year, and it wasted so much of my time. And I don't know what it was. It didn't like make me pay attention to it. But these are things, and I think one of the biggest learnings is that you're always learning and you're always adjusting.
It's so true. And I would add to that too, it's also boundary setting.
Yeah.
Yes, it's learnings, but it's boundary setting. I have not done a very good job, really, if I'm really being honest, on boundary setting, because for me it's like, no, we're going to get this done and we're going to hit this, and I'm always responsive and I'm available, and that has created some extension of boundaries, that I need to also kind of figure out in a different way going forward, like setting my phone down at 9 o'clock at night, and not, as crazy as it is, not responding to anything until, my kids are off at school in the
Yeah.
morning. That's hard.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also my team's taught me that, but it's a balance. It's definitely a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. All great tips. Thank you so much for everything. I know that we are at the end and wrapping up, but there's one question that I ask every single woman on here, and that is, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh, the worst advice I've ever received is to not trust my gut. That I was, you can't
In
trust
what
your gut.
context was that?
I couldn't even. It was quite a long time ago. A male told me that. I'm like, you don't. You got to look at the data, and you got to look at the insights and the feedback. And yes, while very true, you do want to look at the data, but the data, you can always tell a story with the data, right? Regardless. And so you also have to be able to trust your gut, especially as an entrepreneur. And validate that with
Yeah.
the data. But
Yeah.
trust your gut.
Amazing. Yep. We always see similar themes in this question. That's why I love to ask it.
I love
Awesome.
that.
Erika, thank you so much for coming on, taking care of lady business today. If people want to find Hey Mama or you, how do they do that?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on, Jennifer. I love always talking with you. It's been so great. You can find more. We're currently in the transition. So if you go to heymama.co, it will redirect you to Luminary, or you can go to Luminary, which is weareluminary.com. And then you can find me. My personal website is erikahanafin.com.
Erika with a K, by the way.
Erika with a K. Yes.
Erika with a K. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone listening to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode with a friend who needs that extra push to own their success. And if you want more strategies, stories, and exclusive content, follow us on TikTok at Taking Care of Lady Business, on Instagram at thejustice.dept and Jennifer Justice L, or visit our website at thejusticedept.com. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC and Salutations Media Co.